Welcome to the first part of this four-part story, The White City, written by Patrick Neate and read by me, Brian Blessed. Part 1. The White City. King Philippe stood on the ridge above the White City, just as the moon rose over the rocky outside of this man-made valley. This marked break of up was Philippe's favourite time. Philippe knew nothing of beauty, but if he had, he might have thought this the most beautiful thing his young eyes had ever seen. The tide of light that washed the city below in its cool gaze reflected off the pristine white structures in their symmetrical and called the smooths to work from their hidey-holes caves and woods beyond. Tonight, however, pensive, and his eyes were fixed on the far end of the valley, where Electric Mountain was still growing, and his one-time bud busy building his own little empire. Citizens were now defecting almost daily, more than 20 so far, including seniors like Solly and Randa, of course. They went with all his promises of good grub, even though they knew there was no way back. Philippe shrugged. He couldn't really blame them, because baby Lonnie could be quite the charmer when he chose. And besides, every dude needs to move. Philippe scratched his head, turned around, and looked off down the long tarmac that stretched to who knows where. He blinked and listened as hard as he could to see if he could make out the chug-chug-chug of Louis's old motor vehicle. Nothing yet. With the moon now high in the sky, the up's work was begun, and the smooths were lugging all the fruits of yesterday's labours to the side of the tarmac, sweating and swearing with the toilet. And the timing of this cycle was an ongoing frustration. Since Louis would only ever come around this hour, it had to be like this. The smooths would work salvaging motors, pipes, and things from the latest consignment of white skyscrapers. Then, when the birds began to cheep with the first light of day, they would squirrel them away to their stashes in the caves before they heard the great rumblings of the ogres, metal monsters, which arrived with the rising sun. Only when the ogres were long gone with the closing of up would the smooths re-emerge from their hideouts, bringing out their scavengings for King Philippe's vetting and then Louis's consideration. You see, nobody wanted to be around when the ogres entered the city. Those gigantic beasts with hairy lips and chins, and hands big enough to squash you like you were a ripe piece of fruit. Once, a mouthy little character who went by the name of Cripple because of her lame left leg hadn't limped for the shadowed safety quite quick enough, and was spotted by an ogre who caught her by the wrist and dragged her into the midst of his fellows. The other smooths watched from the rocks, transfixed.
Hey guys,
the ogre said.
Look, I found myself.
Cripple screamed that they had to let her loose, but the ogre just looked at each other completely amused.
What's he saying?
Said one.
Anybody recognize that language?
Another knelt down and still towered over her like a tree. He smiled so wickedly that the watching smooths felt their stomachs somersault.
You better come with us, little miss. Okay,
he said.
You better come with us.
Ogres bundled Cripple into one of their metal monsters, and she was never seen again. Philippe recalled how powerless he felt when the ogre's monsters sped off down the tarmac. If he couldn't look then what kind of king was he? From the distance, Philippe finally heard the familiar sounds of Louis's motor vehicle. He checked down to where the smooth stash was stacked, and saw Chinky consort puffing on a cig and watching him closely. He smiled at her. She always looked so forlorn in her ripped skirt, with the American writing and the big tick on the front. She smiled. "You all right, Majesty?" "You reckon we're going to get good stuff off Negro tonight? Smooth's getting kind of starvacious." Philippe sighed. Negro was what dudes called me because of his skin. So matte black, it seemed to swallow out. But Philippe, who was the only one who ever spoke to him, always addressed him by his proper name. Louis's three-wheeler eventually pulled up and its owner dismounted.
Evening, Majesty.
He said. Despite the full moon, Philippe still saw his teeth and eyes way before the rest of him. Only when he got a lot closer could Philippe check him out properly. As usual, Louis stuck out a hand and ruffled his hair. The king hated it, but what was he going to do? The dude may not have been an ogre, but he was still twice Philippe's size, and then some. The story was that Louis had once been a smooth in White City himself, but Philippe, who had a longer memory than most, didn't believe. The two checked out the salvage bin side by side, but Louis was already shaking his head. "I'll take the motors," he said. "The ogres don't want the rest of this rubbish no more." Philippe felt sick. What was he going to tell the citizens? It had been the same for several cycles now, and they were getting kind of panicky. Why? He asked.
Just the way it is.
Louis loaded the motors into his trailer and handed over a box of turning veggies and a small sack of rice by return. Philippe felt his eyes begin to prickle. "That's it."
That's it.
"But we're starvacious," the king protested. "Hungerized." Louis sighed and fetched out one more browning cabbage.
Best I can do, he said.
Then he reached into his denims, produced a small pack of baccy, and grinned broad and greedy. They rolled up and sat side by side on the tarmac.
Close the appetite.
Philippe pulled hard on his cig. "Not really." He offered the pack back, but Louis said,
Keep it.
head rushing from the smoke, Philippe plucked up his courage. "You going up Electric Mountain?" he asked. "You gonna deal with baby Lonnie and them?"
Sure, he said. They got what ogres need.
"Even after Lonnie broke rule number 1 and you helped him do it?" Louis glocked his teeth, and Philippe immediately knew he'd gone too far.
Not my business, Majesty.
Louis muttered, and flicked his half-smoked cigarette. Philippe would have salvaged it, but the dude ground dispersing every shred of baccy. He was making a point. He remounted his motorcycle.
See you on the up.
Right, on the up. The marketeer sped away on his three-wheeler to hook up with baby Lonnie and his dudes. He pulled up next to Electric Mountain, so tall that its summit was almost level with the tarmac, like it was climbing out of the valley. Baby Lonnie and them had some good stuff, all right, but Louis did his business double quick. Whatever he said to Philippe, he didn't like being small much, and trusted them even less. If you didn't watch them close, they were all grabbing hands and thieving. It was as if they had gone kind of wild since leaving the White City regularity. And besides, he had an appointment at the FTZ, didn't he? So he had the deals done and dusted in 10 minutes flat. Louis full throttle back down the highway. He made the perimeter fence, the FTZ, but a woman trailing her unwanted against her. She was leaving here, which would be identity. He ever a strong substitute.
Du hast mir etwas genommen, hat sie gesagt.
Don't worry, my sister.
Wie viel sind das?
A rich, big house with a garden, servants, guards, the whole works.
She began to they'd have security on in a flash. I'm not sure, she said. Louis the
32 gehabt.
perimeter lights revealed a milky coffee.
Wir haben näher ran am Zaun.
It's for the best.
It was done quickly after that.
Von denen,
He
ja?
walking away with 10 of his He looked back to see the woman.